reframing how we're stating something can be a big difference in amplifying the relationship with our money. What's important to you? Are you needing cash flow? Are you needing liquidity? Are you needing diversification? Are you needing growth? Other options that we can have available to us in order to have our money working efficiently. So we don't just only have options like the traditional marketplace, there's other options too. It's when your money makes money.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Our next guest is a financial architect helping people understand or even rethink about how they're making, use, and grow their money. Tara Mettler is here to guide us with building a better relationship with our finances and create a personal economy. So grab a notebook and buckle up. This is a gem you don't want to miss. And if you have already not subscribed, now is the perfect time to hit that subscribe button. Here we go. Hello, Tara. Welcome to Infinite Icons.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's so wonderful to have you. Where are you joining us from?
From Canton, Georgia, just north of Atlanta.
Oh, perfect. How is it at your neck of the woods?
It's getting really warm and muggy, and we have a lot of pollen.
It's not yet summer and it's already hot there.
Oh, yeah. We get started early.
All right. Maybe someday I'll get a chance to visit
Absolutely.
Georgia.
Yeah, love to have you.
So nice. All right, Tara, can you give us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So my company is called Position Yourself Wealth Strategies. And like you said, I'm a financial architect. So what I do is I help people to build the life that they're looking for financially. And I found just from my own personal experience and an experience that I hear over and over again through my clients that a lot of times when they work with somebody in the financial field, they tend to have so much emphasis put on retirement that they're not able to enjoy the life that they have right now. And I feel that that is really a missed opportunity. And so I feel very strongly about helping people build a personal economy so that they can kind of get that 2-for-1, if you will, right? Where they can build their life the way that they want it so that it serves them and aligns with their goals, that they're able to accomplish what they're looking for, not only now, but also in the future as life transitions inevitably are going to come.
Right, so true. Money is so essential for everybody. So to start with, what is the basic financial knowledge that everyone should have?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Really when it comes right down to it, there's a few principles and it just kind of revolves around things like having a proper relationship with money, having a proper timing on how we're utilizing that money, proper cash flow and usage of that cash flow, and probably one of the most important things is having goals, and then not just having a goal like I want to retire early or I want to hit a financial freedom date or things like that, but to have a really clear blueprint as to how we're going to attain that in the immediate, short term and long term. And so those are some really important financial principles that I love to work with my clients on so that they can get that clarity and that confidence and really understand what they're doing. And so really, I guess another point that comes into that too is their education. It's super important to continue our education in finance because it's always changing, Yeah,
it is ever changing. Talking about money, how can we actually make our money work efficiently and effectively for us? Are there any ways to make that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of financial principles that are always really good to keep in mind because a lot of times people think that when it comes to growing money or things like that, it's about budgeting or saving or different things. And yes, those are absolutely important things that we must do in order to give ourselves a framework, if you will. But when it comes to it, there's a lot of other principles that come into play that unfortunately aren't common knowledge and aren't taught as frequently as I feel that they should be, which is why I really take that educational piece seriously. And like one example of that would be something called the Rule of 72. And that is something that a lot of people are not familiar with, but it's a very basic principle of money where you can determine based on the Rule of 72 how long it's going to take for your money to double. So when we're talking about growing wealth or, you know, achieving bigger and better goals when it comes to our financial journey, that's something that we need to take into account. And so do you mind if I share just like a couple of examples as to how the Rule of 72 works and
Absolutely.
like give it like
Absolutely.
a real, okay. So
Yeah.
I did some calculations because I wanted to make sure I had this right. So the way that the Rule of 72 works is that you take your interest rate and you divide it into 72. And so that shows you how many years it's going to take for your money to double in that type of a product with that interest rate. So I took a look at like my bank, where like my checking and my savings are, as to what their current rates are for today. And so right now, a savings account, just a regular run-of-the-mill savings account, is earning a 0.1% interest rate. So not even a whole number. So if what we're doing is putting our money, if we're saving, but we're putting it into a vehicle like a savings account, if we divide that into 72, it's going to take 720 years for that money to double. Now,
My goodness.
I know I would love to be around for that long, but obviously it's not going to happen. So what does that tell us? You know, just using that really simple principle, it tells us that a savings account isn't going to help us get wealthy, right? So, okay, so then we think, what other things are there to put our money in? So we could put our money into something like a CD or a high yield savings account. So I took a look at what those rates are. So as of today, those rates are averaging around 4.5%. So definitely a big increase over 0.1%. But if we put our money in something like that, we take that 4.5 divided into 72, it's going to take 16 years for it to double. Now, that's a whole lot better than 720 years. But if you figure the average person lives about 85 years, give or take, you know, we're only able to flip that money 5 times. And that's if we started day one when we arrived on the planet, you know, so is that a feasible option? Not so much. So now we're starting to take a look at things that have a higher interest rate. So our next option would be something like the stock market. So if we take a look at that, the stock market averages somewhere between 7 to 10%, give or take. So if we take that 7 or 10%, we put that into 72, it comes out to either 10 and a quarter years at 7% or 7.2 years at the higher 10%. So now we're flipping our money 8 to 11 times in our lifetime, which is starting to get better. But is that all that there is? Nope. There's even other options out there that can get you 12% or more. So if we start taking that, now we're flipping our money every 4 to 6 years, depending on what that interest rate is. So now we start to see some effective change, some forward momentum, some upward spiraling, if you will, and we're starting to like really see our money working for us. So that's just one thing that we can keep in mind, that when we are thinking about how can I make my money work best for me, not that we're trying to chase interest rates, because that's not what we're trying to get out of this, but we will have a really good understanding of, if I'm putting the majority of my savings into a savings account, it's not going to serve me for at least a number of lifetimes, right? Whereas if we have it in other things that are giving us a higher rate, now we start to see some more effective change.
Awesome. What was the number you said for the savings account? The interest rate?
Yeah, so like a regular savings account is 0.1% right now.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So it's just, there's not saying that that's not a good place, right? Because there's always a place and a time for every type of vehicle that's out there. But, you know, when we're taking a look at the principles of money and how it's going to serve us, then we have to start taking those things into account. It's like I always like to tell people, your dollars are like little green soldiers. They never eat, they never sleep, they're just working all the time. But they have to be put to work, and they can handle multiple jobs. You know, we can only do one task well at a time, right? You know, and even if we've got multiple jobs, a lot of times it's coming at a sacrifice of other things, you know, whereas our dollars, they don't have any of those worries. So we can really, really put them to work, and we can utilize them in a way where they can have multiple jobs at the same time and they can handle it.
Oh, fantastic. You seem to be so invested in the finance and the financial world. So what inspired you to start there?
Well, that's a really great question. Thank you. When it comes right down to it, like for myself, I've always just had like a personal passion for money. I grew up in an economy and in a family that didn't have much. And so it kind of started some patterns, right? Some relationships with money that really weren't healthy. And if I'm going to be totally honest about it, I kind of became obsessed with it, you know? So it's like I was obsessed with making money and saving money and what can I do with this? And so then even as I got older, and I started like getting jobs, right? And graduated from babysitting and all that kind of stuff and actually got real jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was a matter of, okay, so this is how I'm producing money. I'm producing this, but now how am I effectively utilizing it and saving it and growing it? And I just didn't have a lot of answers or a lot of options. And so I started doing a lot of personal research, and, you know, I'm just a very out of the box kind of person to begin with. So I found plenty of rabbit holes, went down them, did things in a non-conventional way. Well, eventually it gets to the point where now, you know, you're getting older, and now it's time to start thinking about retirement, and the concept of a 401k is introduced to me. And I'm like, really? This is how people are saving money for retirement? It like didn't make sense to me. I was like, why on earth would I be putting in my hard-earned dollars into something that is volatile and could lose not only my growth, but the principal that I put in? And I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know for how long it's going to happen. I don't know how long it's going to take for it to get back up, like all these questions. And I'm like, how can this be the gold standard? You know, so I fought against that for like a really long time. And then eventually I couldn't find a better solution. So I succumbed to starting a 401k like everyone else. And when I get my statements, you know, there were a few times where I was happy, but there were a lot of times when I'm like, this is not where I want my money to be. So long story short, eventually I ended up meeting a wealth strategist through networking. And in her 2-minute elevator pitch, she talked about concepts and things that I was like, how have I never heard of this before? You know, not only have I had a personal passion for it, but I worked in banking for a number of years, you know, so I was even in like a financial environment, and all that did was raise more questions. And so I reached out to her, like picked her brain to death, you know, and I was just floored at this whole other world of information and opportunities. And I mean, just everything that I was like, how have I not heard of this before? How is it that the financial professionals that I've gone to for advice or for information, education, they didn't share this with me? And so throughout the course of my journey, it's like I realized this just isn't information that most people have, even if they're in this environment, you know, even if they're in the financial environment. And so it became really apparent to me that not only was it education that I didn't lack, or I lacked, and I thought, well, maybe it was just me. Then I started talking to other people about it, and they were like, I didn't know that either. And I was like, really? You know, because these were people who I thought they must know about this. Nope, they didn't. And so really when it came right down to it, the more people that I talked to about it, because I was becoming more and more impassioned about the progress that I was now seeing that I had been looking for so long, that it showed me that this is an education that isn't available readily, and it needs to be. And so that's when I started my company. I did everything I could to drink in as much information as possible and to be able to share that with other people. And so that's where we are today.
Oh my goodness, fantastic. That is so beautiful. And looks like you found your answers through your
Yeah.
mentor, if I could say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would be a really good way to say it. Yeah. And it's like it's always an ongoing education, because it's like there's never an end to it. There's always something new. I mean, even just recently there's been people that I've come across that I'm like, I had no idea that that was out there, and I'm so grateful to be able to learn that information, have those connections, because it just continues to further serve not only my education but then to the benefit of my clients.
Hmm.
Yeah.
We're talking about knowledge and education about finances.
Hmm.
I believe it's a common notion that investing in stocks, trading is not for the faint of heart.
Hmm.
So that's purely because we are not aware of how it works, or maybe it is too overwhelming for somebody to
Can be. Yeah.
understand for
Hmm.
a little while, and then it doesn't happen on its own. You got to be invested in that.
Hmm.
So, could you give us a little more information on, kind of comforting us who do not know much about
Hmm.
uh, shares and trading and stocks and stuff?
Hmm. Yeah, so really when it comes right down to it, there's so many options that are out there, and I myself, I don't actually deal with like the stocks side of things in the traditional marketplace. I tend to deal more in the alternative, but also in the education and the coaching of all of that. So when it comes right down to it, a lot of times what I have found, I can just speak from my own experience, is that people believe that this is the only option that is out there. And so that's where I like to educate my clients that there is more to life than the traditional marketplace, but that's what we have been conditioned, that's what we've been exposed to. And really those are our options, right? If you think about it, when you go to work and open a 401k, where does it go? It goes into the traditional marketplace, stocks, mutual funds, things like that. You go to a brokerage and you open up a brokerage account. What are your funds going to be put into? Again, it's going to be stocks, mutual funds, bonds, annuities, maybe, things like that. And so that's just kind of the experience and the environment that we have been exposed to. But that's what I really love to share with my clients, is that there's more out there than that. We've kind of become accustomed to the idea that we have to be involved in something that's volatile and variable, and we just have to accept the losses along with the wins. And you'll hear lots of different statements like you just have to stick it out. You're in for the long haul, and all of that, and really that comes into play with another rule of money that I always like to educate my clients on, and that's the power of compounding interest and the importance of having compounding interest. It's like what that is when your money makes money. So when your money makes interest, and then you're making interest on top of that, so it's like it starts this curve where you're starting off kind of slow, but then as time continues to go on, that curve increases in its steepness, and the longer you're in something that has compounding, the faster and higher it takes off. Well, unfortunately, when you interrupt that process, you're starting it over again. And so that's one of the problems that I found for myself when I was in the market, is that when you'd have those wins and you were just, you're starting to climb up, then all of a sudden there would be a market correction or a shift or a drop or, things like that. And now you're starting over again. And it's like that starting over period has a long-term cost. And so a lot of what I do is I educate my clients on how we can continue that compounding interest to keep on going, and other options that we can have available to us in order to have our money working efficiently. So we don't just only have options like the traditional marketplace, there's other options too.
Oh, got you. So, when is the best time to invest, and where should we invest? What's
Yeah.
an ideal place to invest?
So the best time was before, next best time is now, so and really where is a very broad answer. It depends. It's very, very dependent upon your situation, your personal economy. So where are you right now in your journey? What are your goals and your needs? I always ask my clients when they're taking a look at their goals and how they want their money to work. What's important to you? Are you needing cash flow? Are you needing liquidity? Are you needing diversification? Are you needing growth? So it's like those four things shape what you're going to do with your money and where you're going to put it, because every product out there, like I said before, there's always a time and a place for every single product that's out there. But is it the right time for you? Is it the right step, the right progression? And so whether you're doing something in the traditional or in the alternative space, there's lots of options there, but it needs to be very tailored to your needs and your journey.
Hmm. So true. Yeah, it's so unique to each one's needs and
Hmm.
capabilities, probably.
Right. Yeah. Hmm.
Right. And talking of timings and other things, are we heading towards a recession? Because I know recessions are a repeating events. It is not that
Right.
it's going to happen once and you could forget it, it's done and we're done with it. It
Right.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like there's always the market, the economy in general is cyclical, right? And so you've got your ups, you've got your downs. It happens, and then you've got lots of different other factors that are in there, that come into play and affect an economy. And so whether we're in a recession or not, it is sometimes, how do I want to say, it's sometimes in a way where it's like you might see it in one avenue, but oftentimes it's a balancing act. And so when we see a recession happening somewhere else, we see something else happening. So I guess like a good example of that is that when we start to see inflation and things like that, you start to see interest rates going up, and it affects a lot of other things, but then you see decreases in something else, or you see wages take on a different form, or so it's like there's always this balancing act. And that's where it's really important to understand your personal economy, because if you build it in the right way and you've got your goals set up and different things like that, now you can kind of weather those storms, where if it's going to affect, let's say, the housing market, well, then, you've got your plan in place as to what you're going to do if maybe refinancing or getting a HELOC or selling the house isn't the right move right now. And so you can build that personal economy in order to be able to weather those storms and help navigate you through, so that you're putting your emphasis on the things that are improving, that are accelerating, that are going in the right direction. And so that's kind of how I take a look at it. I don't look at something as a recession as like an overall general rule, because we've got ups and downs in lots of different areas within that environment.
Yes, so true. And you just mentioned about inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us, or probably everybody, is affected by the current inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Right from, a simple grocery shopping to
Mm-hmm.
investing in an asset.
Mm-hmm.
So, are there any ways that we could tackle this situation? And I hope this inflation is also temporary and not,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, again,
me
it's
too.
cyclical, right? So yeah. So basically, a lot of times what happens when we come into an economy where we're experiencing inflation and things like that is that we have to make our money work smarter. It's about working smarter and not necessarily harder. I mean, sometimes we have to do that too in order to get to a certain goal. But really making our funds work more efficiently for us. Like I said before, they're little green soldiers. We can put a lot on them and they can handle it, And so sometimes it's about the mindset. And really, when it comes right down to it, our relationship with money has a huge impact on how we behave with it, how we think about it, and then how we think about the environment that we're in when we're using it, So are we finding ourselves saying, well, I can't afford that. It's too expensive. I don't have enough. Well, what that ends up doing is it ends up reinforcing those negative thought patterns, those negative behaviors, and we find ourselves continuing in that cycle. Whereas if we're taking a look at it in a positive mind frame, then we can start to see positive improvements. So that's coming at it from, a little bit more of like a spiritual mindset of it. But when it comes to a tangible mindset, when it comes to the cash flow and things like that, sometimes what we need to do is we need to really take a hard look at how are we utilizing those funds? Is there something better? So again, going back to our very first thing that we were talking about when it comes to the rule of 72, do we have our money in something that's not working for us? Is there a better place that we can put it? Can a simple shift, like taking it from just a regular know-nothing savings account into something like a high yield savings account where now it's earning 4%? Okay, well, now we've started to create money for ourselves, right? In an economy that's experiencing inflation. So we've done that. A lot of times what I see is patterns and behaviors with people is that then when they get money in, so like let's say they get a bonus. Well, what's the bonus spent on? A trip, right? Or they get their tax refund back. Well, where's that spent? Well, they renovate something in the house, And so we see these behaviors where when money comes in, it's not evaluated as to, okay, how can I make the most out of this money so that it benefits me for the longest period of time? We're kind of in a behavior where we want that quick fix and quick return and things like that. Whereas if we grew that money and we put it in something that grew that money, well, now we can utilize that interest, or we can start to create some additional cash flow and increase that cash flow in order to pay for the things that we want to do. And so that can happen even in an inflation type environment. And so a lot of times when I'm working with clients, that's what we're doing is we're examining their behaviors, we're examining their mindset, we're seeing what is it that they're actually doing with funds, especially when they get bonus funds, increases in salary, rebates and things like that back. Is it just money in, money out? Or are we putting it to work in order to build up our economy to endure an inflationary time?
Awesome. I would love to know from our audiences, what do they think about these beautiful strategies? Have you guys already used any, or is interested in starting something new? Let us know in the comments. So Tara, how can we actually incorporate financial clarity, awareness on a regular basis? We are not taught in school about how to handle our money, and I don't think it's a major subject at school. We do learn some mathematics and statistics, a little bit of economics and stuff, but not on personal money at all. So how do you think we can get clarity in general?
Yeah, so the best thing that you can do in order to get clarity, and especially on a daily basis or on a regular basis, is to really identify what your goals are, because money will find its purpose. If we don't give it a job, it's going to give itself one. So in order for us to be educated consumers about money, something that we literally use every single day, we actually do have to spend time, just like we would if we were going to go on a diet, or if we had a health concern and we had to start making changes. We would start learning about it, right? We would take classes, we would go to professionals, we would join support groups, what have you. Well, money is no different than any of those things, and like you said, we don't get that kind of education because it's not there, right? And so we kind of have to take that upon ourselves and be an active participant in how we're consuming our funds. And so one of the exercises that I like to do with clients is for them to to really nail down what their top 3 to 5 goals are, and not just have those goals, but now let's start to do a game plan. Let's start to blueprint what kinds of behaviors and actions we're going to have to put in place and by when, in order to achieve that goal. So, like if somebody's saying, I need to get out of debt. Okay, well, that's a fantastic goal. But now how are you going to do that? If you just say, I need to get out of debt and I'm just going to put extra money on my credit card every single month, well, guess what? Yeah, exactly. You're still going to have more expenses going on it. There's going to be interest, and you're going to find yourself in this cycle where it's like, I put all this money toward it and I'm still not out of debt. Well, that's really discouraging. And now we're not going to necessarily continue on with that goal anymore, right? And so when we say, okay, I want to get out of debt, well, then it's a matter of, okay, how much debt do we have? What is our current behavior on it? So what time frame do we want to get out of debt by? So now we can kind of start working backwards as to, okay, I have a 3-year plan to get all my credit cards paid off. I have X amount in balances on these. This is how much I'm putting toward it. This is what I can do. So now it's not only a behavior of maybe it is putting more money towards it, but maybe it's also not using those credit cards as much. Is there a way that we can do things so that our funds are being more efficiently used, right? And lots of other things that we can do too. That's just as an example. But, we have to start taking it step by step. And so what can we do today? Like, what can we do in the next 30 days to start working towards that goal? And have accountability for it, because that's the other side of it, is that we can be working towards a goal, but if there's no accountability, are we going to stay on it? Unless we're a very principled person, are we going to really keep ourselves to that? So, we can start setting out like a 30-day plan, a 60-day, 6-month plan, a 1-year plan, and start getting ourselves to the point where we know that time frame is coming up. How are we doing in accord with that? Are we on target? Do we need to shift? Did something come up that's kind of thrown us off track that we need to address? Okay, if that did, now how do we get back on that horse and keep on going so that we hit that goal as close to our target time, as possible? And so it means being an active participant of that journey. It's not just we say, yep, this is what I want to do, and we kind of just hope it happens, maybe do a couple of things in order to get to that goal, but we really need to be on it and have that accountability on a regular basis to see actionable change.
So true. Yeah. And those special items on the balance sheet is definitely inevitable. It keeps happening. Maybe an unplanned travel, or a sickness which needs to be addressed, or something like that. So
exactly,
it's better to be aware of your funds and be educated.
Yeah, and that's really why I emphasize so much on setting up an economy, a personal economy. It's not just about, I want to grow money, I want to get out of debt, I want to buy a house, I want to pay for my kids' college, I want to retire early. It's like, it's not just about those things. It really is all encompassing. It's like when I talk about an economy in my classes, we're used to the economy that we're in, right? Within our nation or what have you. We understand it's the consumption of goods, the production of goods, and the exchange of goods and things like that. But it really goes a lot further than that. It goes into our culture, our education, our values, our legal system. Like it's so much more than just money in, money out. And so our personal economy is the same way. How you and I make money and spend money is going to be very different. And it's going to be different than the next person and the next person. And it's because of those cultural beliefs, the education that we come from, the environment that we're in, our own mindset, all of those things. We each have our own environment for that. And so when we can create an economy, then when we have things like that can knock us off track, like you were talking about, we've got all of these systems and strategies in place that it's like, okay, yep, I fully acknowledge that happened. And yes, I felt it, but it didn't take me completely off guard. It didn't take me off my main goal. I'm still aligned. I'm still on track. And to me, that's the most important thing, is to get us in a position where when those waves are hitting us, it doesn't capsize the boat. We just ride the waves and we just keep on going, you know?
I love this concept of, personal economy. Yeah, it is so smart to know your money and how it
Mm-hmm.
works.
Yeah.
Could you also tell us a little bit about how to build a relationship, a better relationship with your money, your finances, and
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So that's really where it comes to kind of having a heart to heart with yourself on decisions. You know, I ask clients, do you find yourself, when the topic of money comes up, what kinds of adjectives would you describe your feelings at that time? Are you feeling insecure, anxious, scared, nervous, you know, indecisive, I don't know what to do? Or are you feeling confident? I got this. Yes, I know which direction. It's like it's a very big shift, you know, and a lot of us tend to go towards the side where it's like we feel anxious, and because it's unknown, and all of these things. So we have to have a heart to heart with ourselves as to, when a financial decision, especially a big financial decision, comes up, how do we feel about it? Like, what are the thought processes that go through our mind? Kind of like I had said before, you know, are we like, oh, we can't afford that? Oh, I don't have enough money for that. Oh, this came at the wrong time. You know, it's like all of those are things that we've probably all said. And that's our mindset. That's our relationship with money. And so when we can identify that, like, does making a decision, like if we are going to change where we're going to grow our money, okay, so like maybe we're not going to do a 401k, we're going to do something else. Is that, how does that decision make you feel? If we're honest with ourselves, are we scared or are we feeling confident in it? So if we're feeling scared, why do we feel scared? Is it because of past experiences? Like, have we made a decision like this in the past that has had a bad outcome? Well, analyze that outcome. If it's not something like that, is it because of, maybe we're afraid of what other people are going to think of us if we do something a little different? Why would we feel that way? Maybe it's part and parcel of how we were raised, and the things that we heard and saw regarding money in our family. Lots of different things like that. So when we can identify, when we can sit down and think about how financial decisions are making us feel, and then kind of work it backwards as to what got us to that feeling, well, now we can start to switch the story on it, right? So if instead, so let's say something negative comes up where, you know, it's going to cost us something, you know, an unexpected expense. Let's say, yeah, ran down the road and a bunch of nails, and now you got to replace a bunch of tires on the car, right? Okay. So there's an expense we weren't expecting. Well, instead of saying, oh, I can't afford that, now it's a matter of, okay, how can I afford that? Just a simple switch like that gets you in the right mind frame, where it's like, now when you go to take a look at your personal economy, you're going to be like, okay, well, we can do this and we can do this and we can do this. Now it's solution minded as opposed to scarcity minded. And so even just something simple like that is reframing how we're stating something can be a big difference in amplifying the relationship with our money. And so when we think about it, I always like to tell people, money is just a tool. It's a renewable resource. You know, there's always more money to be made. There always is. And so it's just a matter of, how is it going to come to us? How are we going to make it come to us in order to be able to fulfill what need we have? It's there for that reason.
That's such a beautiful way to look at money, and as a very positive thing. It's a resource to
Mm-hmm.
come in. So yeah, it is amazing. That was brilliant.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah. All right. So that was amazing, Tara. We have these fast five questions for you. You could give me a word or a sentence long answer.
Okay.
So here we go. What is the best advice you ever received?
Be honest and be positive.
So cool. And what's the advice you would give to your younger self? when it comes to finance or career?
Keep searching. You're going to find the answer.
In fact, you did, right?
That's true for most things. Keep searching. You'll find the answer.
Awesome. What would you be if you were not what you're today?
Oh, that's a good one. I'd probably be an interior designer.
Oh, so nice.
Yeah.
Okay. What are you still working on as an entrepreneur?
I'm actually working on branding. So I'm working on getting some more assets built for my clients and getting that information out there.
Beautiful. And one word to describe you?
Positive.
Oh, amazing, amazing. That was fantastic. Are there any words of wisdom before we close?
Yeah, I would just say that education is probably the biggest thing when it comes to our finances, and to find somebody that you trust and you respect, and just never stop learning. Always take opportunities, whether it's classes or webinars, podcasts, you name it. There's so much information out there, and you won't find it if you don't go searching for it. You know, I always tell people you don't know what you don't know until you know it. So there's plenty that we don't know, and there's lots of information out there to fill that gap.
Oh, nice. Right. So, what's the best way to reach you for our financial advices and tips and tricks?
Absolutely. So you can go to my website, which is wealthstrategiesforlife.com. Or you can hit us up on Instagram or Facebook, which would be at Position Yourself WS. And those are all great ways to reach me.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. That was fantastic talking to you. And thanks for your time and sharing your expertise with us. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you. It was great to be here. Thanks for asking me too.